Hi, my name is Todd Leonard.
And my name is Herb Montgomery, and we're just talking.
Please take a moment to like our broadcast by clicking the thumb icon. Uh, and if you haven't already, please subscribe to our channel. And if you'd like to get notifications of upcoming episodes, click that bell icon.
So each week, Todd and I are going to be talking about the lectionary reading from the Gospels for the upcoming weekend. And we're going to be talking about those readings in the context of love and inclusion and societal justice. Our hope, our goal is that our conversation will be just, as in justice, but that also something will be said during this time that might inspire you alongside with us to do more than just talking. So, Todd, what passage are we looking at this week?
We are in chapter 21 of Matthew, and we're looking at verses 23 through 32.
And what's the story? What's it about?
We've got Jesus teaching in the
Oh, that's
temple,
right. Yep. His
and
authority gets challenged.
yep, so he throws a conundrum at the Pharisaical Jews, and then they go from there, and Jesus keeps teaching. So why don't you start us off with what you're unpacking, Herb?
Yeah. So first, whenever we're in these kinds of passages, I think it's very important just to remind all the readers, listeners, watchers, whomever, that this is not um, the way historically some more harmful sectors of Christianity have interpreted. This is not a choice between Christianity versus Judaism. This is not when he gets to the end here and says the tax collectors and prostitutes are entering into the kingdom before you. Um, it's not about Christianity replacing Judaism. Jesus was a Jewish man, remember. The prostitutes and the tax collectors were Jewish people. The chief priests and all the elders, the upper echelon of the temple state that were challenging his authority here, they were all Jewish people. This is a debate, it's a conflict not between Christians versus Jews. This is a conflict within Christianity between
You mean a
people in
conflict in
different
Judaism?
social locations.
Conflict in Judaism.
Is that, did I say Christianity? Sorry, I misspoke. It's conflict within Judaism, within Jewish culture, within Jesus's Jewish society at that time, between different social locations, not between Jews versus Christians.
Right.
This isn't the church versus Judaism. This is certain Jewish people were embracing Jesus's teachings, while others, the elite, the powerful, the propertied, they were the ones that were or at least resisting it, rejecting it. But the people, by and large, embraced what Jesus was saying. Because again, I interpret the Jesus of the Gospels as leading a Jewish renewal movement. And we've talked about this at length, where Jesus is he's calling them to return to the economic teachings of the Torah, specifically those ones that dealt with eradicating poverty from from society, like in Deuteronomy 15. But um, but again, the tax collectors and the prostitutes, they were embracing this stuff. We have a great example of Zacchaeus, at least in the Gospel of Luke, and Zacchaeus's life change. It wasn't a commitment to um, start going to church once a week. It wasn't even accepting Jesus' death, so he could go to heaven when he died. The change that Zacchaeus made was not religious, it was economic. It was, if I've defrauded anyone, I will make that right, and even more so. And I'll pay it back. And then half of what's left after that, I'm going to give to the poor. And Jesus responds to that action as today salvation has come to this house. Today is salvation for Zacchaeus. And again, it's interesting that if we have tax collectors and prostitutes, it shows you the patriarchal climate in which this story was written down, that we have the names of at least one of the tax collectors that did
Mm-hmm.
this. We have no names of any of the prostitutes that did this. And some will say, well, what about Mary Magdalene? Well, that's a lie. Mary Magdalene was never a prostitute. That was just an attempt by, the patristic church to try to lessen her influence as an apostle and those who recognized her apostleship. She wasn't a prostitute. We literally have no names of anyone who was any of the prostitutes, but we have names of the tax collectors. We have Matthew, we have Zacchaeus, we have these different ones. But anyway, that's the point I think that's being made, at least at the end, is again, this isn't between Christianity and Judaism. There were certain people in Jesus's society, those who were labeled as outsiders. Tax collectors were they were viewed as those who had betrayed Jewish interest in benefiting Rome. For prostitutes, they were outsiders. They were judged as morally inferior within this society. And Jesus is saying, yet they're embracing the economic teachings of the Gospels, and they're entering into the kingdom ahead of you guys who are resisting it. So I think, again, all of that I think is an important context in whatever we say next about this passage, to remember that this is a struggle within among classes or social locations within Jewish society, not Judaism versus Christianity, as has typically and harmfully been interpreted here.
Right. If you were to make it a comparison, you go to Jesus coming to America today and having a debate with different subgroups of Christianity. It would be a debate where you got the Methodists and you got the Baptists and you've got the Catholics and then and then it'd be a debate between uh, the stock market elite and
Mm-hmm.
and and the middle and lower classes. It would be those kind of it wasn't
You would say
it,
things like the Poor People's Campaign is entering the kingdom ahead of
right. That's right.
you. Yeah.
Or yeah, or the undocumented worker is entering the kingdom, and it would be and we're all talking about all these people are Americans. So we're not talking about Americans versus some other nation. We're talking about everybody who would be in this debate would be American. So that's what Jesus is doing back in that time, is he's having that debate, having those challenges and discussions coming from those different classes within Judaism, not a debate between Jewish and non-Jewish or Jewish and Christianity.
Correct. Correct. Yeah. And two, I mean, it's a great story because Jesus just went through and flipped the tables, right? That was his protest, his social demonstration. And the next day he's in the temple teaching, and they're like, who gives you the right to do any of this? You know?
Yeah.
And then he brings up, I mean, as you were saying a minute ago, he responds by bringing up John the Baptist and kind of throws him a test question. I'll answer your question if you answer mine.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
You know, do you have any thoughts on him bringing up John the Baptist there?
Well, he's just clever. It's a clever ploy because he uses something that, again, the Pharisees and some of the upper classes of Judaism were very much opposed to John the Baptist. Um, but he's standing there in the midst of teaching to a lot of people who love John the Baptist, and so he's got them in a very politically difficult place. And so the ones that are challenging Jesus are very politically minded, and he sends them a question that that puts them in a political conundrum that they can't quite get out of. And it's a very clever question.
Yeah, it's kind of like it's very similar to, it's at least related to a scenario maybe today where a politician who is placing party before country and has to appeal maybe to their extreme voter base. There's that tension there of you can't just do what's right. You have to actually, it's the reverse situation where you've actually got to, because of your donor base. In the Jesus story, um, it's fear of the people. You don't want to offend
Mm-hmm.
them
Mm-hmm.
or whatever. And so I mean, I like it too because the people recognize this is once again illustrates the challenge between different social locations. The people that the elders were afraid of offending, um, the people viewed John the Baptist as a prophet,
Right.
as standing in that Hebrew prophetic justice tradition, calling out the injustices of his day. And Jesus is like, so who sent John? What authority was John using? And if and they don't want to embrace that he's a prophet, because then that puts them in the same relation to him as those before were in relation to the justice prophets.
Yep.
And basically Jesus comes down at the end of it and says, listen, if you're not going to recognize that John was standing in the Hebrew prophetic justice tradition, you're not going to recognize me as standing in that same tradition too. So you're right. It is very clever. It's very clever.
Yeah. And at the same time, it also Jesus Jesus uses it as a way to get them out of the picture so he can get back to doing what he's trying to do.
Yeah.
Uh, he realizes that what they're attempting to do with him is to get him sidetracked, get him off message, get him off focus, off mission, and he sees that for what it is, and he knows he's not going to convince them and change their minds on anything, and so he does something to really get rid of them as soon as possible, so he can get back to teaching the people who are hungering for what he's saying and doing.
Yeah. He basically dismisses them. It's kind of like excuse me, sorry. It's kind of like tone policing today, where we're not dealing with the injustice. We're trying to sidetrack people in how they're responding to injustice. And
Mm-hmm.
we're making the conversation not about the harm that's being done through the system, but the manner in which you're speaking out against. We're changing the focus from the injustice to the person speaking out. And Jesus just dismisses it here. He says, I don't got time for that. I got to get back to work
Yeah.
about bigger things. I think of years ago, I have a friend, an LGBT friend who, I asked them once, why do you never engage in these debates within Christianity about different interpretations that would be affirming for you? And they say, you know what? I have no interest in playing text hockey with Christians. I'm not here to debate. I don't have time and energy to waste on debating whether or not I have the right to exist. I exist. I have been called to do greater things in my life than always defend my existence. I need to be about the work that I'm about and not get sidetracked by this other stuff. And that's a kind of what we see happening here with Jesus. Like you said, Jesus doesn't get distracted by it. He just dismisses them, and there's a lesson in that for us today, to not cooperate when people challenge our authority, when we call for change. Don't let them sidetrack the discussion away from the injustice
Yeah.
to debating over us. You know what
Right.
I mean? We're not talking about me. We're not talking about,
Right.
what is that in philosophy when you attack the speaker because
Oh,
you can't
oh,
defeat the argument, so you start,
attacking the person's credibility or something.
yeah. I'm so tired this evening. I'm blanking on when that word is. It'll come to me as soon as we stop talking to each other on recording.
Yeah, that'll be perfect time. But
so
go ahead.
so go ahead. Go ahead.
I, the the whole. I mean, you see this. the whole strategy of those who are against progressive policies, the progressive movement on economics and on race and things like that, LGBT, those opposed to those progressive movements are very good at finding people in the progressive movements making mistakes and saying, see, they said this horrible thing or they did this horrible thing, therefore the whole movement is invalidated. Or they or they use labels and like the woke movement and things like that to talk about people who are highly and overly sensitive about everything, and to try to get people and getting it to the place where people where they've been pretty successful at getting people in the progressive movement to fight back on that and talk about what being woke looks like and things like that, and all this talk. The opposition has succeeded in getting people off mission and off message.
Yeah,
And
yeah. We're no longer attacking the injustice. Now we're defending wokeness.
right.
And I'll defend it too. I mean, it needs defending, but you're right. It does change the subject.
Yep.
And
Absolutely.
speaking of wokeness, I love this. I didn't realize this, but years ago, we named our Renewed Heart Ministries newsletter that went out every month, Awakenings. And I just love that that's what it's called. But this week I was watching the news and I saw an interview with Helen Prigine. Is that maybe that's how I
Yeah,
think
I
that's
know
how
you
you pronounce.
can't. I know exact the woman who was featured, whose story was told in Dead Man Walking.
Yes. And she talks about how she was reading the gospel, she was reading the Jesus story, and she decided to that, that's what that moved her, changed her life to focus on social justice. And she moved to an impoverished area of the city, and then she became enveloped with enmeshed with the Black community there in the city that she lived, and she started seeing all the two Americas that
Mm-hmm.
people live in. She had no idea that people were afraid to ever call the cops, or that would just that she would be afraid to be pulled over for speeding, or that just how different life looks for people of color and the Black community here in the United States than it does for many privileged white communities. And
Mm-hmm.
and she says, and I just woke up to this reality, and I was just awakened to it. And I
Mm-hmm.
thought, you know what? She didn't mean to, but that is the best definition of woke that I
Yeah.
have heard in months, is you
Yeah.
just wake up to the injustice that's
Yep.
going on around you.
Yep.
But again, we just sidetracked the conversation again. Even here and now, it's the same thing. Jesus didn't allow himself to get sidetracked. He's like, you know what? I don't have to defend being woke. I'm talking about injustice right now.
Right. That's right.
Yeah. And then he launches next into this story of two sons.
Mm-hmm.
One said yes and then didn't, and one said no and then did.
Yeah. And so that, which is a great parable at bringing out what really matters for the kingdom of God. Is it your words and your Facebook posts and your uh, you know, the and your little selfies and things like that, or is it what
You're
you
virtue signaling.
actually do? Yeah, right.
Yeah. Yeah. The point of the two sons is that profession matters little and actions matter much.
Yep. And I think, and hey, in both, any two sides of an argument you want to bring up in this, everyone is guilty of spending way too much time talking.
Yeah,
And
they're just talking.
they're, oh, hey, whoa, that sounds like a show. Um,
One of the sons was just talking.
so yeah, there's uh, we're all at risk of doing that.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think there's some lessons in this week's story, in this week's reading from Matthew, that are incredibly relevant to those of us. If we define Jesus' kingdom not as going to heaven, but as a world here now that is safe, compassionate, and just for everyone, as we're working towards that and calling out, naming injustices, standing up against systemic injustice, there are going to be times where we too are challenged, like Jesus was, by those in control of the system. And I think there's lots of lessons in this week's reading for us.
Yeah. No,
Lots
it's
we could emulate.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. It's there's it's a stay on mission lesson all the way
Stay
through.
on target.
Stay on what you're doing. Don't forget why you're doing what you're doing. Don't get defensive. Don't make it about you. Don't uh there's just so much that easily distracts from the mission of God. And
And well intended, well meaning
sure.
distractions. You know what I mean? Someone else's intention may not be good in trying to get you distracted, but sincere people get distracted by that stuff. Stay on mission.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I have and for those of you who are Star Wars fans out there, I just want to make reference to just again call on the stay on target reference. I know you're out there watching this thinking Todd didn't even catch that. Todd's not a big Star Wars
I have
fan.
no idea what we're talking about.
Exactly. Exactly. So some of you I know are watching this like Todd didn't even get that. Well, let me just do a little bit of explaining. Todd shouldn't be expected to get the Star Wars reference that I just made, but some of you out there get it. So
I'm here to talk about the Bible, man.
forget that force stuff. So I want to share my screen for a second and bring up a quote that I actually put in my blog this week in the context of what we're talking about tonight. And that's this statement here. It's a statement by Oscar Romero, but it's quoted in We Cry Justice, page 93. I've been this month reading We Cry Justice. It's a book put out by the Poor People's Campaign. It is such a good book. It's going to be next month's recommended reading at Renewed Heart Ministries. But I love this quote. It says, even when they call us mad, when they call us subversives and communists and all the epithets they put on us, we know we only preach the subversive witness of the Beatitudes, which have turned everything upside down. And if anybody knows about the history of liberation theology and Oscar Romero's role in Latin America, down there in El Salvador, then this statement holds a lot of meaning, a lot of it's just a special statement. But again, it's in context of this week that here, even Oscar was saying, you know, even if they call us communists,
Yeah.
don't get distracted. We know we're only preaching the Beatitudes.
Right. That's right.
Yeah. Well, you got anything else this week, Todd?
I don't. I think that's good stuff for this week.
So, I want to say that I was looking at the passage today for 2 weeks from now, and I got so excited that it's the parable of the wedding and the invitation, not Luke's version, Matthew's version. And if you're watching this, man, I want you to be here next week for sure, but make sure you're here 2 weeks from now. That is going to be a stellar conversation.
Looking forward to it.
Yeah, I'm so excited. It's going to be so good. I just saw some new things in that story from a progressive social justice focus through that lens that I'd never seen before, and I was like, "Oh, that's really amazing!" And so, anyway, I'll share it in 2 weeks, and we'll see if there's anything to it. People
So,
might think I'm crazy, but we'll see.
we'll we'll watch you get excited, and that will be exciting, entertaining for us.
That's right. Free entertainment. Tune
Yes.
in 2 weeks from now. I mean, tune in next week. Same bat time, same bat channel, but 2 weeks from now for sure.
So, where can we find all your stuff, man?
You can find me at renewedheartministries.com and everywhere else that leads you. And Todd, can I say it? Can I announce it?
Go ahead, man.
I just want to be able to be the first one to tell our YouTube show, our Just Talking audience out there, that you are now going to be able to find Todd Leonard not only at toddleonard.com or toddjleonard.com. I don't know what your website is
Todd
even.
J.
What is
Leonard.
it? toddjleonard.com. But you're also going to be able to find Todd at renewedheartministries.com as well. Todd has just come on board to be one of Renewed Heart Ministries contributors. So look for his materials on our website too.
Awesome. I'm happy, excited, honored. All the good fuzzy feelings. I'm all of that about joining the team. So thanks for bringing
we're
me up.
excited, man. We're excited for what's on the horizon.
Yeah, me too.
All right, everyone. Thanks for watching this week. Tune in next week for another thought-provoking discussion. And we'll see you then.
All right, y'all take care.